Have you ever seen a kid show that seemed absolutely harmless on the surface, but the longer you watch it, the more unsettling it gets? The visuals are happy and everything, but there was just something wrong about it, something that's not quite right with the show. This goes for any type of kid show that goes into this category, and the same especially goes to the religious shows, which is in this story's category. In today's episode, we'll be learning about a strange, mysterious religious show that does a bunch of very questionable things to get their messages across. Now let me tell you, things are about to get crazy. So, sit down, relax, and settle down with your Bible, because we're gonna read the story of Faith Buddies. The landscape of late-night, early-morning television can be a grim and desolate place. I can't tell you how many times I found myself awake at 4 a.m. watching an infomercial for something like boner vacuums or facial cleansers and asking myself, why am I watching this? Where did I go wrong in my life? I think television has become a lot more dull in recent years because everything is held under such tight restrictions by the sponsors. With everything being monitored like it is, people can't get away with things like they used to. And maybe that's a good thing. But if one has the spare time and is ready to dig through the crap, there is the occasional corner of interest to be found. From my experiences, I usually come across these in the public access, international, and religious channels. The show I'm going to talk about now is of the third variety. It was a humble little show by the name of Faith Buddies, a show featuring interactions between children and puppets, along with Bible stories and song. Not terribly well made or ambitious, it was little more than a second-rate Sesame Street with Bible lessons thrown in. Have you ever seen things like Junior Christian Science Bible Lesson or Wiser Family Puppets? It's that sort of show with a similar unnerving feel to it. Much like Sesame Street, except it leaves you feeling mildly uncomfortable after the end of it. But that's not to say it didn't have its own unique quality to it. And boy did it ever. It stuck to its basic idea, and unlike JCSBL, it doesn't evoke the feeling of everything in the show being the product of one mentally insane person. There has to be at least 3 mentally unstable people involved in the production of Faith Buddies. It was definitely a low-budget venture, consisted in both the monetary and creative sense. The thing about the show that caught my attention were the characters and the unique tone that Faith Buddies had. I heard said that the message itself is less important than the way it's conveyed. Faith Buddies seemed to have this as one of its core principles. As such, its content was largely the same as other shows of this kind, but it lacked the typical softening to make it more appropriate for younger audiences. Bible stories were told by the means of a narration coupled with a slideshow of color pencil images, which would sometimes display very graphic imagery and associate in the story, like Cain's murder of Abel. They don't skip out on the blood like most do. People drowning in the story of Noah's Ark, the plagues of Egypt, especially this one, trials of Job, numerous appearances of Satan, not actually graphic, but more darker, more serious than other depictions of Satan. They didn't censor the words either. If you kept a keen ear, you sometimes hear the word bastard or ass. Always in a biblical context, of course, but it catches your attention. Though I suppose in this current time where 7-year-olds play games like Resident Evil, Call of Duty, and watch the most violent shit the internet has to offer, none of this is all that shocking. So, about the characters. First, there's the main characters of sorts. Pinky. Oh god, Pinky. Where do I start? Imagine Coleman without his neck frill, with a big lumpy head and colored pink. That's basically Pinky. Also notable was his eyes. His pupils were slightly too small and unfocused. Normally this wouldn't be important, except they like to end the show by zooming in on Pinky's face. The character was always referred to as a he in the show, but I could never tell whether his voice actor was a man and a woman. Either way, they gave Pinky a bizarre voice, and it didn't help that he often gives his sentences a painfully drawn-out delivery at random. I can only guess that this was done to show that the dumb kids get it, as Pee-Pee has a tone bordering on condescending. Pinky was like the alpha puppet, and the show gravitated around him. Wherever one of the kids or the other puppets had a question, they would turn to Pinky for his insight. Although Pinky was statistically shown with a Bible and would give verses out most of the time, there would be other times where he didn't mention the Bible at all and seemed to be giving answers on a whim. The first thing that caught my attention about the show was that Pinky's character had a distinct lack of warmth and empathy, which only got worse as the show continued. Pinky would give answers, but they would be very blunt and strangely defensive. Questions about hardships were swiftly answered with things like,
"Be careful with questions like that,"
or
"Don't question God's ways."
Pinky was very fond of the latter statement, and would use it as his way of telling people to simply shut the fuck up. The two other puppets were Bertie and Gelta. There were others that would show up when needed, but these were the main three that were present for every episode. Bertie was a purple hippo and Greta was a green fuzzy bird. They were both little more than dim-witted idiots whose sole purpose would be the foil for Pinky. They would get curious about something, come to faulty conclusions, and then the kids would take them to Pinky to set their dumbasses straight. Pinky would give them a weird, disjointed lecture and they would change their opinion. Pinky also didn't shy away from making cheap shots at them or the kids, but they didn't dare to challenge him. Except for one time where Greta called him a smarty pants. This was not met with any verbal response, but merely a cold, hateful glare. I wouldn't think a scene between two puppets not speaking would make me feel uneasy, but it did. Faith buddies quickly became a guilty pleasure of mine. As much of an asshole Pinky was, I couldn't help but be amused by the guts this little puppet had. Pinky would tell it like it is, from his perspective, regardless of whether his words were appropriate or made any sense. And he just did not give a single fuck whether he offended people or not. This was very evident in the homosexuality episode. Yup, they had an episode about gays. And with this delicate subject was treated with all the subtlety of a hammer on glass. Sodom and Goliath, drawings of bearded men fresh kissing, Lucas 2013, dubious statistics regarding about AIDS, the whole shebang. Pinky went so far as to suggest that prison rape was a mass conspiracy conducted by Satan to turn man gay. It was funny up until the end, when this little girl was talking to Pinky about her older brother who had recently come out to his family as gay. Pinky began to scowl at her about how he was a sinner faggot destined for hell, leaving the poor girl bawling her eyes out. That's when I first started to really question what the intent behind this show was. It was always a little odd, but the last episode had become quite vile and just mean-spirited. This would accumulate in the show's last episode. Among with everything else, even the way Faith Buddies started an episode was strange. It would feature Pinky asking questions like,
"What do you fear about?"
before saying,
"Today we'll be talking about..."
followed by a black screen showing a word like guilt or forgiveness in white font. The word for the last episode was predestination. And right from that moment, I had this feeling in my gut that something was not right. I have seen other kids touch on controversial subjects like homosexuality or death, although very briefly and with a lot more tact. But I had never, ever in my entire life seen a kid show, religious or not, focus or even mention predestination before. I must admit, I was really curious as where this was going with this. I should have known better. The episode started the same as many of the others. Bertie mentions the idea he heard called predestination and talks about it with Gorta and some kids. A lot of gootiness and dicking around with musical numbers and such. Then they go ask Pinky about it. Pinky reacted to this concept in an entirely too pleased manner, unlike everything seen before. A little boy asked him to clarify what it means, and he said,
"Some people are destined for heaven, and some people are destined for hell,"
and rambles about the power of God. Then the boy asked, "Didn't Jesus die to save everyone?" And Pinky simply replied with,
"He died for the chosen ones."
The other children gradually began to grasp the gravity of this situation and become visibly afraid. The same boy asked them, how do people know they're predestined to go? Pinky tells him,
"You don't know for sure until you die. But if you look deep within your heart, you just may find the answer."
Pinky then stares at the screen and everything comes to a halt. I thought the show was over until another tire car comes up. There is no redemption for the damned. Another slideshow of illustration appeared, but there's no Bible story or moral this time. It's just a glimpse of what the viewer has in store for them if they're not chosen. A man and a woman hugging each other while being born to death. People with their feet chained to the ground being eaten by menacing devils whose mouths span their entire body, with their bodies being whipped from their feet. People being impaled on spiked pillars by flying devils. People in the lake of fire having their bodies born and regenerate forever. Giant deformed creatures fighting and gouging out each other's eyes. The accompanying music is spliced with sounds of screaming and painful cries, with intermittent quips from Pinky such as,
"This is the wrath of the Lord,"
and
"It makes me happy to see sinners get what they deserve."
This hole is thankfully cut short a few minutes in by yet another abrupt jump cut. This time, the credits have started rolling, but the scene is zoomed out to show the whole set, including lights, cameras, and microphones. The kids and puppets were nowhere to be seen. A man in a black hoodie enters the room and proceeds to douse everything in gasoline before setting it aflame. The cameraman follows him out, and the last scene shows the black hooded man and the cameraman laughing as they toss all the puppets used in the show into a furnace, with the final shot being a close-up of the burning Pinky puppet. It hasn't been that long since I saw the last episode, but I have yet to find any answers as to what the intent of this soul really was, or why it ended that way. I had some guesses that it might have been a covert parody all along, or perhaps the soul's founders got their funding cut and this was their way of getting back. Or maybe they were just crazy. I really don't know. And it's probably for the best. I never will.